Hello everyone. This is a video about my sailing background and how over 50 plus years I managed to accumulate 100,000 miles and counting at sea on different boats that I owned and also sailing, crewing for other people. In the beginning, in 1972, I bought my very first boat. I was 23 years old, just a little Sunflower. And I kicked around in Florida for a while through some financial difficulties, mainly the Arab oil embargo in the early 70s upset my original plans. And eventually I decided to move to Southern California to learn about building boats, specifically sailboats. And I bought a Pacific Sea Craft 25 hull deck kit and finished it out myself, launched it, sailed it a little bit locally in Southern California, and then sold it. And then kind of contemplated my naval for a while. I was started building a 30-foot boat, basically from scratch. And during that process, I was given an opportunity by an acquaintance of mine to crew on a delivery passage from Taiwan to Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands. So I jumped at that chance because I didn't have any time constraints at the time, and it was an all expense paid trip in the sense that my flight over to Taiwan from California and my flight from Kwajalein Atoll back to California was paid for, plus all the food and stuff on the trip. The owner of the boat, or the guy that bought the boat, had it finished, and then he sold it to another guy who lived and worked in the Marshall Islands there. They are the ones that they were the other true crew members, and I was the only one with any significant, if you want to call it that, amount of experience. Uh, Plus, also, I had already by that time been building boats for quite a while. And needless to say, I won't go into details, but good thing I was on the trip. Anyway, after I got back from that, I kicked around doing boat work for a couple of more years, and then decided to go back into being into construction and being an electrician. Now, the man that I worked for was an avid racing sailor. During the time that I worked for him, he became the Commodore of the Yacht Club. And so I had the opportunity to crew on many different boats racing. I think I did the Newport Beach, California to Ensenada race 3 times. I did a race including delivering the boat up to San Francisco and then raced from San Francisco back down to Catalina Island. That was on the Catalina 38. And I also was crewing both for the guy that I worked for and for some other people on other boats, local club racing stuff. And one of the last things that I did when I was still doing boat work was I built a 30-foot boat. I did the hull and the deck out in the low desert in Southern California, and then moved it back closer to the beach in where was that exactly? Santa Ana, basically California, and finished the boat. And little did I realize that way back when I lived in Florida and I first got this dream to go sailing, that it would take 20 years to bring it to fruition. But eventually it did. I finished the boat, got it launched, and set sail. Finally, after 20 years, I set sail into the sunset. Well, not exactly, because I went south first. From Southern California, sailed down towards the Marquesas, the first stop 3,000 miles away in French Polynesia. And I sailed down there, and then over to the Tuamotus, the dangerous archipelago, then off to Tahiti, Moorea, Raiatea, eventually wound up in Tutuila, Samoa. Back in those days, it was still called American Samoa. And basically, I was out of money, or pretty near that. But I was assured by a couple of different people that I met that, given my skills and my background, I would have no trouble finding work there, which turned out to be quite true. I was busy doing all kinds of work, some boat related, some construction, electrician related, and stayed there through a hurricane season and worked to rebuild my cruising kitty. Then I decided to, instead of continuing going westward, because financial situation was still somewhat marginal, I decided to go back to California. And that's where I went. Sailed from Samoa back to Tahiti. That was quite a challenge, sailing dead to windward in easterly trade winds. Then up to Hawaii and back over to Dana Point, where I started to live aboard the boat and work when I could back as an electrician. Well, work was a little spotty, and I was getting older in my early 40s, and thought it would be a good idea to start to create something that would give me some kind of security as I got older. So I sold Magi, got an apartment, and jumped into the world of computers, learning HTML coding in the early days. This was all self-taught. I bought a computer and learned how to put it together, and learned the basic programming, how to set it up. This was back in the days of Windows 3.1 and then Windows 95, Windows 98, going through all that stuff. Eventually, I'm working as much as possible full time, of course, as an electrician. And I had an unfortunate incident at work where a ladder came out from underneath me and I was pretty severely injured. Well, that kind of messed up my whole future plan again. And after contemplating, tried to go back to work after the injury and months of physical therapy, finally decided I just can't do this anymore. And the timing was right. I sold out my place that I had in California and moved to Florida. Or I should say, moved back to Florida. And I thought, well, what can I do now? I looked at the possibility of going to a local junior college to study computer sciences, but they told me that I needed to live in the state for at least 1 year, to get in-state tuition. I couldn't afford the out-of-state tuition. And I thought that was ridiculous because I now owned a house, had a Florida driver's license. But they said, sorry, that's the rules. And I said, sorry, I'm not going to pay 3 to 4 times the tuition rate for an out-of-state tuition because I live here. So then what do I do? Well, I decided to get another boat and go sailing again.